Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we shall read from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Adi Lila chapter 1 and text number 41. And the verse is as follows. Gadadhara Pandit Adi Prabhura Nija Shakti Tan Sabara Charane Mora Sahasra Ranati. And the translation, I'll repeat the verse. Gadadhara Panditadi Prabhura Nija Shakti Tan Sabara Charane Mora Sahasra Pranati. And the translation, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the internal potencies of the Lord, of whom Sri Gadadhar Prabhu is the foremost. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This particular verse have us understand that Gadadhar Pandit, of all the, you could say in one sense, Nija Shaktis. And the Nija Shaktis means of all the internal potencies. Gadadhar Pandit is the first and foremost of those internal potencies, which indirectly tells us that that is the form of Sri Radha. Now the pleasure potency, which is called Ladini Shakti, known as the presiding deity of the form of Srimati Radharani, is also given in another verse in relationship to Gadadhar Pandit in the Adi Leela in the 10th chapter, which is the 15th verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Beautiful verse. Badasaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani Tenho Lakshmi Rupa Tanra Samakya Nahi. So here the word Lakshmi Rupa is most important. And Prabhupada translates it in the word for word as the incarnation of the pleasure potency. So Prabhupada's full translation is that Gadadhar Pandit, who is the fourth branch, is described as an incarnation of the pleasure potency of Sri Krishna. So therefore no one can equal him, which is Gadadhar Pandit, as the foremost internal or pleasure potency. Then Srila Prabhupada have us understand in his purport to that particular verse that in the Gaur Gonadash Dipika by Srila Kavi Karnapur, there it is described that the pleasure potency of Sri Krishna is actually Vrindavaneshwari. Like we have that verse, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. So Vrindavaneshwari is Srimati Radharani, and that personality known as Vrindavaneshwari or Srimati Radharani is now personified in the form of Sri Gadadhar Pandit in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So one of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's most intimate associates, Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, he describes that in the form of this Lakshmi, which is given in the verse Lakshmi Rupa, and the pleasure potency of Krishna is known as Shama Sundar, Vallabha, in relation to Sama Sundar Vallabhi. So therefore, the same Shama Sundar Vallabha is present in one sense in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes as a Gadadhar Pandit. And also in the Gaura Gunadish Dipika, it explains how that not only Gadadhar Pandit is a form of Srimati Radharani, but Gadadhar Pandit is also simultaneously an incarnation of Lalita Shaki together with Srimati Radharani. So Lalita Shaki is also known as Anuradha, which indicates that Anu means to follow Radharani. So therefore another name for Lalita Shaki is Anuradha. And therefore those persons who follow Srimati Radharani are also included in the form of Gadadhar Pandit, headed up by Lalita Shaki or Lalita Devi. Now, I know these are quite sort of, in one sense, rasa or relationships, facts or philosophy. But still, I would like to explain something from this particular verse. Bada Saka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani, then ten ho Lakshmi Rupa Tandra, Sama Kehanahi. So the word Lakshmi Rupa is most important, which is translated by Srila Prabhupada as the incarnation of the pleasure potency. So here we see that all forms of the goddesses of fortune, comes from, you could say, Srimati Radharani. However, Srimati Radharani is like you could say, a personality who's bossy in relationship to Krishna. She controls Krishna with a controlling nature in that way. So if Srimati Radharani is controlling Krishna with her controlling nature, so naturally she is sort of bossy. And therefore she's on the left side of Krishna, so therefore she's known as the left-wing gopi. But that same Radharani becomes submissive and not bossy in the form of Gadadhar Pandit. And how does this actually happen? How does this actually happen? In a brief way, I'll attempt to explain. When Krishna wants to experience Radharani's love for Krishna, then in a sense, Krishna plunders that love, plunders it, literally takes it away from Srimati Radharani. And as a result, Srimati Radharani exclaims, "Oh, I have no love for Krishna. I have no love for Krishna. I have no love for Krishna." Now, when somebody feels, especially Srimati Radharani, that I have no love for Krishna, not that somebody has taken a love away, but I have no love for Krishna. Of course, it only could be taken away by Krishna himself. So when Krishna plundered that love from Srimati Radharani that Radharani has for Krishna, then Krishna transforms into Kanchani, in other words, golden form of the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So at that time, when Radharani sort of loses that love by Krishna plundering her love for him, then she sort of feels in her consciousness that I have no love for Krishna. I have no love for Krishna. And that becomes the form of Gadadhara Pandit. And that form of feeling that I have no love for Krishna in the form of Gadadhara Pandit is a very submissive form. It cannot be like a sort of controlling form. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada also have us understand in relationship with verses from Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami itself, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But prior to that, there's this beautiful verse from Brahma Samhita. Chintamani prakara sadmashu kalpa viksha laksha vriteshu surabhi abhipalayantam Lakshmi sahasra sata sambrama sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. And in this particular verse from the Brahma Samhita, which is from the 5th chapter, text 29, the word Lakshmi is actually translated as the goddesses of fortune, where the Lord is served, Krishna is served with great affection and reverence by hundreds and thousands of goddess of fortune. So it doesn't really use the word Radha or Gopi. It uses the word Lakshmi even here, as in that verse in relationship to Gadadhar Pandit from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in one sense, when Radharani loses a controlling situation, because she only controls Krishna with a devotional service, affection and love for Krishna in the form of serving Krishna, which is devotional service. So when she sort of loses that, she misses serving Krishna and she feels I have no love for Krishna, which is a submissive mood in the form of Gadadhar Pandit. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a beautiful, you could say, explanation of this in the last Ancha Leela in chapter 7, given very wonderfully, where it is described that love also can be compared to that of Satyabhama in Mathura, Dwarka, you could say Dwarka. And Satyabhama appeared in Chaitanya Leela as a Jagadananda Pandit. See? And Satyabhama is you could say in one sense, an expansion of Srimati Radharani from Braj Mandala, from Vrindavan. When Radharani expands from a sweetness, like a Madhurya form, into an Aishwarya form, an opulent form, that form is Satyabhama in Dwarka. And Satyabhama always used to quarrel with Dwarkadish, which means Krishna, the king of Dwarka. So in the same way, that Satyabhama, beautiful personality, appeared in the form of Jagadananda Pandit in Chaitanya Leela. And Jagadananda Pandit used to be very accustomed to provoking, you could say, affectionate and loving quarrels with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And at times also, there must have been some disagreement between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagadananda Pandit, which is their loving nature towards each other, which is the nature of Satyabhama. However, Krishnadas Kaviraj have us understand that together with Srila Prabhupada and the purport, But Gadadhar Pandit's pure aesthetic love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also very deep. But Gadadhar Pandit's love is different from Jagannatha Pandit's love, which is who is Satyabhama. But Gadadhar Pandit's love is that like of Rukmini Devi. And Rukmini Devi is the chief queen in Dwarka. Now let's go a little, you could say, a little further into recollecting the source of Rukmini Devi. So we have Radharani, and her father's name is Vrishabhanu. And Vrishabhanu has a younger brother named Chandrabhanu. Chandrabhanu has a daughter named Chandravali. And because Chandrabhanu and Vrishabhanu are brothers, then Chandravali is automatically a younger sister of Radharani, who is the daughter of Vrishabhanu. So somehow or the other, when Radharani feels, now I have no love for Krishna, and Krishna has become Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and she gets this submissive nature, that is actually the submissive nature of Chandravali, who expands from a Madhurya, sweetness form in Vraja, into Dwarka as the form of Rukmini Devi. So here also Srila Prabhupada says in a purport, in that Antya Leela in the 7th chapter, that Gadadhar Pandit is also has the nature of Rukmini Devi to be submissive to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in that way. So one time there's a beautiful pastime in this regard. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always wanted to sort of quarrel with Gadadhar Pandit, whereas Radharani always used to quarrel with Krishna. But that is no more there in the submissive form of Radharani in the form of Gadadhar Pandit. So Mahaprabhu used to agitate Gadadhar Pandit, through what is called, Srila Prabhupada, at least Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in the actual verse, it's called affectionate anger. And because of Gadadhar Pandit knowing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the supreme, Gadadhar Pandit never used to become angry, and it was never invoked. Now there's a reason for this. There's a reason for this. And that is that because Radharani's sort of love was taken away by Krishna, and she feels, I have no love for Krishna. So similarly, Gadadhar Pandit felt now, who is the submissive form of Radharani, that if I react to Mahaprabhu agitating me through affectionate anger, then Mahaprabhu may leave me if I get angry. So he always was submissive and never became angry with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in that particular purport in the Antya Leela, chapter 7, in text number 145, I believe. Yeah. Let me just check that. Text number 145 onwards. There's a beautiful description of this entire wonderful exchange between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit. And Srila Prabhupada sort of like refers to Rukmini Devi in Dwarka, where Krishna once, told her, you should rather accept another husband, because Krishna felt he is unfit to be the husband of Rukmini Devi. But Krishna was actually joking, but Rukmini Devi took that very seriously, and she immediately fainted in fear of separation from Krishna, that Krishna may leave me for somebody else because he's asking me to take another husband. She fainted. So in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that same, you could say, Satyabhama was the second queen, not the first queen as Rukmini Devi in Dwarka. That same Satyabhama as Jagannatha Pandit always used to disagree with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whereas Gadadhar Pandit never disagreed. He was always in awe by the Lord's, you could say, natural opulence, and therefore was always submissive to him in all circumstances. Now, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at times shows his apparent anger to Gadadhar Pandit, instigating Gadadhar Pandit, but Gadadhar Pandit, instead of reacting in an angry way, he always became fearful. Why is Mahaprabhu, becoming through affection angry with me? Does he not like me? Fearful that Mahaprabhu may leave him, fearful that Mahaprabhu may not give him any service in that way. So once Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted an invitation to the home of Vallabha Bhatta, and then Mahaprabhu sent Swarup Damodar with Jagannatha Pandit as well as his personal servant Govinda to bring Gadadhar Pandit. So when Swarup Damodar was accompanying Gadadhar Pandit to come to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Swarup Damodar Goswami has sort of appeased Gadadhar Pandit. He said, don't take this angry mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu towards you, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is just trying to test you. Therefore, he may have neglected you in terms of testing you. So don't retaliate in any way. And you fully tolerate his criticism. So Gadadhar Pandit responded to Swarup Damodar that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is completely independent. He can do whatever he likes, whenever he likes, and however he likes with me. And I will not ever become his equal, because I am always subordinate to me. And Gadadhar Pandit said that I can tolerate anything he says, and I can bear any insult on my head, because that will show that he is always merciful to me. And even despite seeing my faults, he is still merciful to me. So like that, when he expressed himself to Swarup Damodar Goswami, then Gadadhar Pandit went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he fell down at his lotus feet, simply crying and crying and crying. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he was always soft internally, but also externally became soft. And Mahaprabhu said, with sweet words, I just wanted to agitate you, but you never became agitated at all. You could not say anything, even when I tried to make you angry. Instead, you tolerated me and tolerated everything. So therefore, I could understand that your consciousness can never ever be disturbed by my tricks towards you. Rather, you remain fixed, so fixed in your simplicity. And because you're so fixed in your simplicity and you're submissive to me, you have purchased me. In other words, you have won me over and you can control me. Amazing. This form of Srimati Radharani in a submissive nature. Now, just a little bit about, you could say, an overview of Gadadhar Pandit's appearance on this new moon. Today is Amavasya. It's considered new moon. We don't say dark moon, we say new moon in the month of Vaisak. And Gadadhar Pandit is a constant companion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu right from their childhood. His father's name was Sri Madhava Mishra, his mother's name was Sri Ratnavati Devi, and they lived very near to the house of Jagannath Mishra in Mayapur. And Ratna Devi, Gadadhar Pandit's mother, and Sachi Devi, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mother, were practically known as two own sisters. And they always used to visit each other because of the close proximity of their homes. And during childhood, Gadadhar Pandit and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Nimai always used to play together. And Nimai used to go to Gadadhar Pandit's home to play, and then Gadadhar Pandit used to come to Nimai's home to play. And they even studied together in the same school. And Gadadhar Pandit was a few years younger than Nimai, but Nimai could not remain without Gadadhar Pandit practically for even a moment. And Gadadhar likewise, he couldn't stand being separated from Nimai, as young boys when they were growing. So during one time, when Ishvara Puri, who is the, later to become the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was present for some time in Navadvip in the house of Sri Gopinath Acharya. That home is still there, actually, when you go to Mayapur. And Ishvara Puri was like teaching from a book called Sri Krishna Lilamrita. Now, you can imagine the future spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching from a book called Sri Krishna Lilamrita. And when Gadadhar used to come to Sri Gopinath Acharya's home, Ishvara Puri became so attracted to Gadadhar that, he immediately started reciting from the book that he himself has composed as from Sri Krishna Lilamrita. And Ishvara Puri could see that this Gadadhar Pandit, at least Gadadhar itself, like a young boy, he was very serene, very patient, very calm, very quiet, and he likes to be in solitude and naturally renounced. So it's like a submissive form of Sri Radha. And Nimai, this time was a little bit naughty. Sometimes he used to ask his fellow students some meaningless questions, and he used to defeat them in logic and defeat his own logic, like that. And Gadadhar Pandit used to simply laugh and smile, laugh gently, but smile also. And he was very fond of how Nimai, used to do this with his fellow students in the school. And sometimes when Nimai was not seeing Gadadhar, then he's saying, who is Gadadhar? So, and he says, and Nimai says that, in a very short time, I'll become such a Vaishnava that even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva themselves will come to my door. And he tells us to Gadadhar when he finds him eventually. So one time, Gadadhar, as a boy, young boys, brought some betel nut paste. They call it pan, in India, to Nimai. And in this Nimai, when he received that paste, in full of emotion, he said, Gadadhar, where is that beautiful blackish boy who is dressed in yellow garments? So Gadadhar thought, what is this? And that Nimai is asking me about a beautiful blackish boy, and now he starts crying. So Gadadhar was dumbfounded. He could not say anything. Then he finally suggested, well, maybe, Nimai, this boy maybe is in your heart. And hearing this, Nimai, he began to tear his chest, with his nails. And then Gadadhar quickly grabbed his hands and said, don't do this. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Nimai said, Gadadhar, let go of my hands. I cannot remain even a moment by not seeing Krishna. By not seeing Krishna. So Mahaprabhu was feeling great separation from Krishna. Then Gadadhar replied, in his very serene, calm, and patient way, my dear Nimai, just please calm yourself. And then Nimai asked, why? He said, you don't worry, I'll guarantee Krishna will come any minute now. Anytime, any minute he will come. You don't have to, look into your heart. He will appear any minute now. So in that way, Nimai became sort of composed. Now from a distance, Sachi Mata was actually witnessing this. And she became concerned. What is really going on with these two? What is going on with these two? And she came running in anxiety there. And Then when she saw some marks on Nimai's chest, because he was looking for Krishna in his heart, when Gadadhar said that, then and when she saw that Gadadhar pacified Nimai, she said, "Oh, my dear Gadadhar, you know, my Nimai, he's just a boy, although he's very intelligent. See, but sometimes I'm frightened to go in front of my own son when he's in this mood, when he's in this frantic moods, of trying to, get his chest open like that." And then Gadadhar, very cleverly, you could say, pacified. In a very gentle way, he pacified Mother Sachi and also pacified Nimai, who was hearing. Like that. And thereafter, Sachi Mata told Gadadhar, "My dear Gadadhar, I'm begging you, you always please remain with Nimai." And then Gadadhar asked why, because then Sachi Mata said, "You know how a mother is. A mother always worries about her son. And I feel like that, always worry about Nimai. What if something untoward or something unfavorable happens? But I know Gadadhar, and I've witnessed also that if you always stay with him, then I don't have to be worried so much about Nimai. I will still worry, but I know if you are him, my worries will become less." So this is this intimate, you could say, boyhood, the youth, boyhood and youth pastimes of Gadadhar Pandit and Nimai, our Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, there is an interesting thing, it's within the Madhya Leela, that Gadadhar Pandit one time was with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. And somehow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to go to Vrindavan. But, Gadadhar Pandit wanted to go with him. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refused him. And then he saw that Gadadhar Pandit felt bad. So he returned to be with the devotees again. Yeah. Then Gadadhar Pandit, in conversation with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, said a very beautiful verse, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he said, "To me, Yahan Raha, Tahan Vrindavana, Tahan Yamuna Ganga, Sarvatita Gana." Very beautiful verse. To me means, Gadadhar Pandit is saying, my dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you, Raha, wherever you stay, Yahan Raha, wherever you stay, Tahan Vrindavan. Wherever you stay, that place is Vrindavan. Yeah. And including in that place is Vrindavan, there's also the river Yamuna, what to speak of the river Ganges and all other pilgrimage places. See? So very beautiful. To me, Yahan Raha, Taha Vrindavan. That means wherever you are, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gadadhar Pandit is addressing him, is Vrindavan. Now there's a wonderful purport in the verse that follows that in the Madhya Leela. That's text 280, and in the 16th chapter, in text 281, Srila Prabhupada have us understand a most important point. That Gadadhar Pandit understood that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't need to go to Vrindavan, because wherever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, that is Vrindavan. That is Vrindavan. So therefore, it was not essential for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go to Vrindavan, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also expressed this himself, actually. When he was dancing in front of the Rath Yatra cart, he mentioned, in the intimate association, More Mana Vrindavana. Mahaprabhu says that my very consciousness is Vrindavan. More Mana Vrindavana. That means my whole consciousness is Vrindavan. So at the Rath Yatra festival, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu absorbed in the ecstasy of being Radharani, wants to take Lord Krishna back to Vrindavan Dham. See? And Gadadhar Pandit is there with him, who's the form of Radha in a submissive mood, feeling I have no love for Krishna. And that love, you can see that Radharani's love, you can see that Mahaprabhu has, in the Rath Yatra by taking Lord Krishna back to Vrindavan Dham. So because it can be understood, and Srila Prabhupada emphasizes is that because Mahaprabhu's consciousness is Vrindavan, so wherever Mahaprabhu is Vrindavan, so therefore all the pastimes of Radha and Krishna are taking place within the personality of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is being observed by Gadadhar Pandit. See? However, Srila Prabhupada have us understand, but just to teach the people in general, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did visit this Vrindavan, which we go to, Boma Vrindavan, in this world. Why? Because the Lord wanted to instruct everyone to visit also this Vrindavan, which is a holy place. So therefore, there's a beautiful verse that Srila Prabhupada, sort of relates to us. Aradyo Bhagavan Vrajeshat Tanayas Tat Dhamma Vrindavanam. That means, according to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, Lord Krishna and the abode of Vrindavan are equally worshipable. But this is also in relation to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So therefore, this beautiful verse, by Gadadhar Pandit, glorifying Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. To me, Yahan Raha, Tahan Vrindavana, Tahan Yamuna Ganga Sarva Tetagana, that my dear Lord, wherever you are, wherever you stay, is Vrindavan as well as the Yamuna, Ganga, and all places of pilgrimage. Now, I'm going to say one last feature here, then we will get to questions or comments, and then I'll have something to conclude after the question and comments. It's a very interesting feature, actually. Now, there are eternal Vrajavasis, as Srila Prabhupada have us understand. So one of the eternal Vrajavasis is Lalita Devi. And Lalita Devi is none other than Swarup Damodar Goswami in Chaitanya Lila, the intimate associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes Lalita Devi may be there in the form of Swarup Damodar Goswami, and other times, just to overlap Lalita Devi's consciousness, sometimes it is that Swarup Damodar Goswami is Vishaka Devi. So these two wonderful, amazing gopis, Lalita and Vishaka, we see sometimes in our altars, in our ISKCON temples, like in Vrindavan, in Bombay, and in other places. Flanking. Lalita Devi is on, Krishna's side, and Vishaka is on Radharani's side. Now they are in Krishna Leela. They are Vrajavasis. But do you know that Swarup Damodar Goswami in Chaitanya Leela, he never visited this Vrindavan Dham. Yeah, he never went to Vrindavan. Didn't come to Vrindavan Dham. So there is another eternal associate of Krishna and Srimati Radharani, and that is, Maharaj Vrishabhanu, King Vrishabhanu. And it's well known, Vrishabhanu Suta Devi, Pranamami Haripriya, that this Haripriya, Radharani, is the daughter of King Vrishabhanu. And he lives at Raval as well as at Varsana. And that's within Vrajmandala, that's a Vrajabasi. But do you know, he appeared in Chaitanya Leela as Sri Pundarik Vidyanidhi. And even Sri Pundarik Vidyanidhi didn't ever come to Vrindavan Dham. although he is Vrishabhanu in Vrindavan as a Vrajabasi. Another interesting one. Our Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur, who sits and chants japa in front of Tulsi Maharani, and he's considered a combined a form of Lord Brahma and Prahlad Maharaj, who appeared in Chaitanya Lila. Even Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur did not go to Vrindavan Dham during Chaitanya Lila. And what to speak of that? You could say an intimate associate in the Pancha Tattva, Srivas Pandit, who's none other than the form of a Narada Muni, he didn't even go to Vrindavan Dham, while being in Chaitanya Lila. Although Vraja Lila in the form of the Rasa Lila was in the nocturnal kirtans in Srivas Angan, with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his close associates. Now, another personalities are called, there are two gopis of Vrindavan, Veera and Duti. Now, they in Vrindavan, a combined form of Veera and Duti is the form of Shivananda Sen. And Shivananda Sen, there are so many pastimes with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as an intimate associate, in the form of Shivananda Sen. Even Shivananda Sen didn't come to this Vrindavan Dham during Chaitanya Lila. And what to speak of another amazing intimate personality, who's the form of Vishaka Devi combined with the form of Arjuna, who's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Sometimes he may be considered as Lalita Devi, and that is Sri Ramananda Rai. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited at one time to Sri Ramananda Rai his Sadbhuj form of Krishna with the flute, Ramachandra with the bow and arrow, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a sannyasi. That Sri Ramananda Rai in Chaitanya Lila didn't go to Vrindavan Dham, although he appeared in Chaitanya Lila. Very interesting. And then very close associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, two of them, is known as Sri Sikhi Mahiti and his sister named Sri Madhavi Devi. Now in Vraja Lila, Sikhi Mahiti is a gopi named Raga Lekha who assists Srimati Radharani. And Sri Madhavi Devi, who appears in Chaitanya Lila, who is the sister of Sikhi Mahiti, is an assistant to Srimati Radharani, a gopi named Kala Keli. Even Sikhi Mahiti and Madhavi Devi did not visit Sri Vrindavan Dham while they were in Chaitanya Lila. And now we come to Sri Gadadhara Pandit. Sri Gadadhara Pandit is none other than Srimati Radharani in the submissive mood of feeling I have no love for Krishna. And Gadadhara Pandit, as we discussed in one of the earlier purports which I referenced, is also a form of Lalita Devi, who's known as Anuradha, who follows Radha. So Lalita is like a form that follows Radha, which is non-different from Radharani in one sense. And also Gadadhara Pandit is Rukmini Devi in that mood of Rukmini Devi in Dwarka. Even our Gadadhara Pandit did not visit or never visited Sri Vrindavan Dham. It's quite amazing. Now, Srila Prabhupada tells us all this. And Srila Prabhupada even quotes Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who points out that there's no authorized documents stating that all these personalities that I've mentioned here, from Swarup Damodar all the way to Gadadhar Pandit and in between that I've mentioned, there's no evidence or document stating that these personalities visit Vrindavan. So how is that? The other eternal identity is in Vraj. Or practically all of them, you could say, other than say, Srivas Pandita and Srila Haridas Thakur. Yeah. So what does this mean? And Srila Prabhupada gives us a beautiful lesson on this. And Srila Prabhupada says, although anyone living in Vrindavan somehow or the other is benefited, but Prabhupada said, the real Vrindavan is actually only appreciated by a pure devotee. And Prabhupada quotes this beautiful verse, from the Brahma Samhita. Premanjana churiti bhakti vilochanena shanta shadeva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achintya guna swarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. That when one's eyes are purified in a sense, not this physical eyes, the eyes of the soul within the heart, when that is purified, then one can see Sri Vrindavan, the original Goloka Vrindavan, also in the spiritual sky, and Sri Vrindavan Dham, which we visit, here in the Mathura district, are identical and non-different. Because Premanjana Churiti Bhakti Vilochana, one can see with the salve of devotion. Now, it's quite interesting how a significant number of our previous acharyas, like Sri Narottam Das Thakur, even Srinivas Acharya, even Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, whose picture we have in the altar, even Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj, whose pictures we have on the altar, and even later Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, whose pictures we have on the altar. All of them, even practically our immediate, very close previous acharyas, all of them engaged in what is called Nama Bhajan. And what is Nama Bhajan? Nama Bhajan indicates that certainly that wherever you live, by Nama Bhajan, one can be in Vrindavan. And then Srila Prabhupada supports this. He supports this. And how does he support it? He supports it in a beautiful way in relation to the establishment of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And Prabhupada says that presently, the members of the Krishna Consciousness movement throughout the world, although they live in material opulent cities, and he mentions cities like London, New York, Los Angeles, Paris, even Moscow, Zurich and Stockholm, he mentions cities. He said, but we are satisfied in following in the footsteps of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the other acharyas, which I've named, Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, the Panchatattva, Srinivas Acharya, at least Srinivas Acharya, Srinivas Thakur, but Srinivas Acharya was with Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamananda Pandit. So he mentions these acharyas. So we are satisfied, Prabhupada, in following in the footsteps of these acharyas. And how? We live in temples of Radha, Krishna, and we continuously hold Harinam Sankirtan, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Srila Prabhupada, in his full consciousness of Vrindavan, makes the statement. And consequently, we live in Vrindavan and nowhere else. So what does this indicate? This indicates that all the temples of ISKCON, wherever you may be, and no matter how opulent, how simple the temple may be, if it has established deities of Sri Panchatattva, Sri Giriraj Govardhan, as deities of, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, and Radha and Krishna, Gaud Nitai, just doing Harinam Sankirtan, chanting that is our Nam Bhajan, and consequently we are living in Vrindavan and nowhere else. Then Srila Prabhupada sort of says, to instruct the people in general also, that And we are also following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who visited Vrindavan. And therefore, we are also attempting to construct a beautiful temple in Vrindavan for our disciples throughout the world who can come to visit and stay in Vrindavan in our place. Amazingly enough. And that is the Sri Sri Krishna Balaram Mandir. Beautiful deities, Sri Sri Radha Shamasundar, Sri Sri Krishna Balaram, and non-different from Sri Sri Krishna Balaram is Sri Sri Gaur Nitai. Thank you. All right. So we shall move to some conclusion now in relation to this wonderful, amazing anniversary appearance day of Sri Gadadhara Pandit. There is a beautiful description given, but it's given briefly by Srila Prabhupada, in a purport in the Antya-lila, again in chapter 7 in the Antya-lila, where it says that no one can describe the characteristics and ecstatic love of Gadadhara Pandit. No one. So what I just did in the whole class? I mean, I tried, but no one can really describe the characteristics and ecstatic love of Gadadhara Pandit. Even if you'd say he is Shakti Tattva, it's still not possible to describe the ecstatic love of Gadadhara Pandit. Yeah. And therefore, that ecstatic love of Gadadhara Pandit towards Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu gets a special name for that. And that special name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is called Gadadhar Prananath. Now, you can well imagine Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has so many, close associates, from Swarup Damodar Goswami to Lord Nityananda to Advaita Acharya to Govinda, his personal assistant. So many personal associates. But this Prananath, this name, Prananath practically means my life and soul, my life and soul, and my life and soul. So another name for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because of Gadadhar ecstatic service and love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his name is Gadadhar Prananath, which means the life and soul of Gadadhar Pandit. So no one can estimate how merciful Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is to Gadadhar Pandit. And people do know in general also, Srila Prabhupada says, especially in Bengal, people do know. And sometimes they say, Gadadhara Gauranga, Gadadhara Gauranga, Gadadhara Gauranga. People say that. And what is that? Prabhupada says, the Lord Gauranga of Gadadhar Pandit. The Lord Gauranga of Gadadhar Pandit, known as Gadadhar Prananath. Very beautiful name of Lord Chaitanya, Gadadhar Prananath. And then finally, there's a beautiful verse that just briefly describes Gadadhar. In the Chaitanya Antya-lila, chapter 7, text 166. So I'm referring quite often to the Antya-lila, chapter 7. So if you want to read more about Gadadhar Pandit tonight, you can go to Chaitanya Antya-lila, chapter 7 and read. So that beautiful verse, Panditera Sahojanya Brahman Yata Guna Drita Prema Mudra Loke Karila Kyapana. Beautiful verse. I like to say it again. Panditera Sahojanya Brahman Yataguna Drita Prema Mudra Loke Karila Kyapana. This Panditera means Jagadananda Pandit, at least Gadadhar Pandit, sorry. Gadadhar Pandit. And Saujanya means is of gentle behavior. Gentle behavior. And Brahmanyata guna, guna means, attributes, and Brahmana means that besides being celebrated all over, including in the consciousness of Mahaprabhu, that Gadadhar Pandit is so gentle in his behavior. And Gadadhar Pandit is a personification of Brahmanyata guna. He is also the personification of all Brahmanical attributes. And why is this? Because Drita Prema Mudra, Prema, he is firm and fixed and steady love, for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is celebrated all over. Loka Karila Kiapana. So therefore, just to conclude this beautiful verse, that Gadadhar Pandit is celebrated all over the world for his gentle behavior, his Brahmanical attributes, and his steady love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.